Okay, so let us start. I can see some other people are joining as well. So welcome everyone. So I'm Jyoti Mishra, Associate Professor in Information Management in Leeds University Business School in the UK. And we have Rene Rich here from KU Leuven, and he is the co-organizer and he will be the moderator for this session. So this webinar is actually part of our Tech4CE, that is technology as an enabler for circular economy research initiatives, where we are trying to bring IS researchers working in circular economy together. So far we have done a couple of workshops in the European Conference in Information Systems. The first one was conducted last year in Norway in 2023, and then the second one was in Cyprus last month actually. So far what we have done is brought together people like researchers together to see how information systems can help in a circularity. But today we are trying to hear it from from practitioners' perspective. So we have got Jasper here from Cirmar, a company that provides digital web applications for the circular economy, such as product passports. And Cirmar actually creates products to bring circular economy in practice and then trying to connect companies to the global circular economy. But you will be hearing more about that from Jasper in a bit. So let me give you a little bit of introduction to Jasper. He is responsible for marketing and sales at Cirmar. His primary goal is to transform and connect existing technologies to help Cirmar achieve the objectives of digital product passport. And this webinar is going to be for 40 minutes. And in the last 30 minutes after that, you will have question and answer. So you can ask your questions. We do have a function here for question and answer. So please do keep on asking your questions there, and then Rennie can pick it up as and when needed. And also, this webinar is recorded and it will be available to you. I think Cirmar has got a YouTube channel, so we'll share the link of how to access this particular webinar as well. So the floor is yours now, Jasper. Over to you. Thank you. But before
Thank you,
that,
Jyoti.
maybe,
Yeah.
Rainy, do you want to say anything before we start?
No, I'm looking forward to it, and
Okay,
yeah, let's enjoy the time.
that's great. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Over to you, Jasper.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Saves me a bit of time introducing myself. But I will do so anyway, because I want to do so a bit more extensively. First of all, thank you all for being here. I'll dive a little deeper into to what we do exactly in a bit. But first, let me introduce why I am speaking to you here. Besides what Jyoti already mentioned, we are pretty practical in terms of applying circular economy principles. We do so together with our customers, with companies, and we work in a broad network of all sorts of parties that are concerned with this transition from a linear to a circular economy. That includes knowledge institutes as well. We've got pretty close ties to universities like Leuven, but also to other institutes like Maastricht University and Hochschule Niederrhein. But more about that later. In essence, what we do is three things. We come up with and we think of and we advise on circular strategies, products, and concepts. We put circularity in operations, which means that if you have devised or have thought of something that's a completely circular design of a product or strategy or concept, you will always need to put this or to organize the operations to make sure that this design comes to fruition. And we've connected that to a digital product passport, which is called C-Passport. We do so for a wide range of companies, but before I dive into a couple of examples, I need to explain why there's two logos in the top of your screen, FB Basic and Cirmar. The first two activities are mainly FB Basic. We origin in the Netherlands. We are active in the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, and in some cases in projects throughout Europe. But FB Basic has been a consultancy company in the circular economy for about 20 years now. And since 2015, Cirmar has been the tech department basically of FB Basic. So it's a daughter company. But today we'll be focusing mostly on Cirmar because we'll be diving into tech that supports the transition to the circular economy. In the bottom right of your screen, there are a couple of examples of customers, companies that work with our tech tools. These are German and Dutch. You might know some of them. Oh, 1 second. I think my slides. Yeah, I've got them back. Yeah, perfect. I'll just pinpoint a couple of examples to give you an idea of how broad our activities are. Because if you think of circular strategies, products, and concepts, you probably can already imagine that that's basically applicable in any sector. So let me pinpoint center parks, for instance, holiday parks, both in the Netherlands and all over Europe. Basically, they're a French company, or their parent company is French, and we help them with all sorts of challenges in terms of circularity, and that ranges all the way from thinking of better materials to use for the construction of holiday homes, all the way to recording what is inside of these holiday homes in digital product passports, and being able to secure the value of all of these materials and recuperating them after use. Another one I'd like to highlight is Elton, a safety footwear company from Germany. I believe they're the largest in Europe. With them, we look at, for instance, how we can make circular safety shoes, which is kind of an interesting one because, as you can imagine, safety shoes are designed in the first place not to break, so not to be taken apart. And that's an interesting challenge to try and come up with a design using better materials that can be reused and disassembled in order to create a concept that is fully circular. And as an extension of that, we also record their products in digital product passports. So that's a little bit of an introduction on what we do. How do we do business? I figured that would be an interesting one because I believe the audience is mostly in academia, but anything you come up with in academia is supposed to end up in the real world and provide business, because in the end, if we want to make a transition, we need companies that make money to realize this transition. So what we do is, on one hand, consultancy that consists of product development. You see the little table in different shades of red, which is basically our theoretical framework that we use to help our customers realize circular products. We do a lot of webinars. Sometimes these are paid, sometimes they're not. And they range they're over a vast range of topics, all the way from circular economy in general to digital product passports applied in various sectors, but also connected to, for instance, legislation like the CSRD or the ESPR, which I will dive into a little deeper later on in this webinar. We do workshops basically on the same themes and topics. We sometimes help our customers create digital product passports. That's not what we want necessarily. Our system is designed in such a way that it should be and is usable by our customers on their own. But sometimes it's basically in need of more time or a lack of time that we are asked by our customers to help them create them. Additionally, we help set up communication and marketing plans because one of the biggest challenges of circular products and marketing them is to bring this message across to your customers who have to purchase the products or have to use the products. So we also help companies sort of tell the story of circular products and how that works. And lastly, we have lots of projects that we participate in. We do so in various settings. Sometimes they're subsidized, sometimes they're not. On the right in your screen, there's a big group of people in the picture. That's from a project that we're doing, which is called Shopping Tomorrow. It's a Dutch project where we are working together with more than 30 companies in retail specifically, and where we're basically drawing up a blue paper on how we can scale the digital product passport as a technology in service of the circular economy, which is pretty interesting. I'll go into one of the use cases we've rolled out as part of this project later on. But that's the bulk of our consultancy activities. And I'll go over to the next slide in a bit, and I'll go into how we earn our money using the digital product passport. But I'd like to go into tech development really briefly as well. We co-develop our tech tools with a Dutch-based partner called Unframed. We did so because, like I said, our origins are mostly in circular economy, in consultancy. We're not techies by nature, and they help us translate the needs that we see to a tech solution. And we have a product owner at Cirmar who is in close touch with their product owner, as you will, and we continuously develop. So that's a daily business for us. And new features that we create always serve the general use of the application. We're not the only company out there that creates digital product passports. Most of them that we see take a bit of a different approach. Lots of digital product passport providers focus very much on customization and translating the marketing of a certain company to a digital product passports. Our focus is on creating scale and trying to help as many companies as possible to implement these digital product passports. And that works best when we have a standardized solution that also translates across sectors. So that's why we do not personalize per customer that we have. All right. Well, that's basically the business model of digital product passports. Next. Like I said, these tech tools, they have firm roots in the circular economy. We are not a tech company from our origins, but we've become one. And it basically our solution offers two different aspects. On the one hand, we have C-Passport, which is the digital product passport. What it looks like and what you can do with it will be up next in the presentation. But to give you an idea of how that works in practice, users get billed monthly for the amount of passports that they use. So it's not a yearly fee or anything like that. It is the amount of passports that you use. We're very transparent about our pricing as well. So the more passports you use, the cheaper it becomes per passport. That's a very conscious decision of ours because we believe it should be available for companies that are very small and maybe only need 2 or 3 passports for their products. But it should also be affordable and make financial sense for companies that work with hundreds, thousands, or possibly in the future even millions of digital product passports. So our pricing is tailored to that. Connected to C-Passport is C-Dashboard, which is like the name already kind of tells, a dashboarding functionality that is completely free of charge. And our customers use it to compare products. So they can compare one product with the other, both in terms of material composition and impacts. More about that later. And it also provides input for reporting. I already see a question in the chat. We will answer that at a later point in time. I first have to make a statement of what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to create a circular world, and we try to do so by going from fossil to urban mining. In other words, we want to stop depleting nature's resources and try and take most of the stuff that we need for new stuff from existing products. So reuse stuff, recycle stuff, and refuse to deplete any more resources. A short timeline of where we are as a company and what's next. Our company, or Cirmar, which we're focusing on right now, was basically the business case was first drawn up in 2013. It was founded in 2015. I won't dive too deep into every step that you see right here, but the important thing to understand is that from a European Union legislative perspective, the digital product passport has started to become quite an important area of regulation. From 2024, so basically from now onwards, the ESPR is being finalized, which means that from 2027 onwards, the first product groups, textiles, electronics, and batteries, will be required to have digital product passports. And part of this eco-design for sustainable products regulation, as you probably are well aware of, is that products need to be designed in such a way that they have less impact on the planet, but also that they're better fit for reuse, and that we sort of try to ban the use of harmful materials. And Cirmar, as a company, has been using digital product passport both for our consultancy activities and for our customers for a bit longer. We've tried to stay ahead of the curve for a while, and we're actually quite glad to see that legislation is catching up, and that other companies are also starting to develop and implement digital product passports, because it only means that the item is becoming more relevant to companies. So far for the timeline. We don't need legislation to take care of our future. That's basically what we always try to tell our customers. There's many more reasons to do so. We try to put the twin transition in practice, which basically means that we try to move companies to a more circular and a more digital proposition. What does that mean? On the one hand, companies often have a lot of sustainable goals, but how do you reach them? Too often, we see companies include in their sustainability reports that they want to be CO2 neutral in 2050 without connecting this to actions to better design of products, which in the end has a massive impact on the overall footprint of companies. We help companies gain grip on their material use. It's something that's often overlooked. We have seen a lot of companies develop over the past few years from seeing sustainability as drawing up a carpooling scheme to prevent 20 cars from driving to offices, and instead having 3 or 4, 5 or 6 cars drive to the offices. That's not sustainability in our view. It's only a very small part of it. And we want to make sure that we focus on that what makes the most impact, and that is material use. It represents the biggest chunk of emissions, and therefore is an important factor to focus on. Emissions, in our view, are always secondary to material use, because they are what is associated with materials use. It always comes after. So that's a very important one for us. Additionally, we want to help them create new business. Like I said, if we want to make a transition from a linear to a circular economy, we'll need healthy companies that know how to market new business, and that includes, for instance, products as a service in line with more circular proposition. Connected to this circular transition is a digital transition. There's a lot of exciting technology. The digital product passport, in essence, is not even that exciting in terms of the technology that we're using. but we want to try and use the digital possibilities that we have to speed up this transition, to create a system where companies continuously improve, where they are able to present what they're doing, make it more visible for customers that are making choices for products. We want them to be able to report and to see and gain insight into their progress. Where are we now and where will we be in a couple of years' time? We want to connect the digital world to physical products. We've put a QR code in here, but there's many more ways to do so. And we want them, again, to be able to voice what they're already doing, to make themselves heard, to use tools that are available to them to express what is working for them in terms of circular initiatives. I'm going to go and sift through these slides very quickly because I believe you are all very well aware of the challenges we are facing. It goes without saying we need to act. Climate change, global warming, that's the better term for it, is having a lot of effect on us humans, on the planet as a whole. But what can we do practically to tackle these issues? We don't particularly like to focus on just the overshoot day, but it's a helpful reminder, possibly quite a painful one as well. But what we do like about this figure is that it focuses on the use of resources, and that is, in our view, where most of the misery begins. We are not being smart about the way we design products and the way we use materials. And if we look at some of the countries in which we are active, it's quite shocking to see how quickly we deplete all of our resources. So it's pictures like these that do address the issue in a sense. The EU wants to be carbon neutral in 2050. To give just one example of setting targets and then having to follow up on them, where do you start? It's a hefty decline that they have to realize in order to reach this goal. And the use of materials is a key driver of the emissions that we produce. So it makes sense to focus on materials use. And that is exactly why circular solutions can provide some sort of, or a big part of the solution to reach these goals. Now, many of you recognize these labels, and we are a bit blinded by them. There are so many that it's kind of difficult to keep track of what makes sense and what doesn't. That's not to say that there's not a lot of valuable labels out there. We are definitely inspired by, for instance, Cradle to Cradle. They do a lot of good work. They go into a lot of detail in their certifications of products. But we believe that for the customer that actually has the product in hand, as well as a development department, R&D departments of companies, to make sustainable choices, we need more than labels. We need something that actually helps us make better choices. In short, the challenge that we see is we use up a lot of materials and the associated emissions cause problems. At the same time, there are a lot of companies that do a lot of good work already, but they want to bring this message across. How do you do that? And thirdly, compliance is putting more and more pressure on companies. They require evidence of companies' activities, and we believe that the digital product passport is a great way to answer these challenges. Like I said, there was already some activity in the chat box. I was curious to know what you guys know about the digital product passport. There were some questions already about what it is, but before I dive into the details, I'd like to see some of your thoughts on what it is, maybe what it should be. The picture on this slide is obviously a regular passport, like yours and mine, that usually consists of some information on us as persons. But what would that look like for products? Feel free to throw anything out there in the chat box. I see honest digital data sets that provide identity to materials. All right. Okay. Yes, that's definitely part of what it is. Any other ideas? If not, that's no problem. Then we'll just continue. Perhaps this first example will help you. If you have your phone with you, you might want to scan the QR code. It links directly to one of the examples that we often use to clarify what digital product passports are, which is an e-bike. I'm sorry, I am Dutch. I have to use an e-bike as an example. It's in our nature. Please feel free to scan the QR code and sift through it as I go through the rest of the presentation. The digital product passport is in essence a continuation of something that we have already been doing for a long time. In the European Union, there are all sorts of labels, pieces of information that we add to physical products to make sure that we understand, for instance, what kind of energy consumption they have, or what kind of materials they're made of, whether they're recyclable, and so on and so on. But this information can be provided much more complete, it can be made more practical, and we can digitize it. And as is drawn up in the Eco Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, it has to be a tool that gives direct access to product information, which will allow consumers and companies to make more sustainable choices. And additionally, it has to help legislators perform their controlling practices. Now, in practice, that means that we no longer just have a physical product with some information on it, but that we have identifiers connected to physical products, like a QR code, like RFID. There is a lot of exciting technology emerging. For instance, and I'm going really deep into specifics now, but quantum dot codes. We've been lab testing with quantum dot codes that carry information in biogenic material that can be impregnated into other materials. We did that with a shoe, and doing so allowed us to scan with an industrial scanner the digital product passport that was connected to that shoe. So there's all sorts of ways and shapes in which you can connect this physical product to the digital world, but that is the starting point, and that is where we start talking about digital product passports. I'm not going to go through the entire legislative context, but it's good to understand where it comes from. It starts at the European Green Deal. Like I said, 2050, we want to have no CO2 emissions in the European Union. What that entails exactly is also not what we're going to be speaking about today, but it's good to understand that there's many legislative initiatives connected to this, and some of them are most relevant to the digital product passport. I'd say firstly the ESPR, because it says that products actually need to have digital product passports. But secondly, also, we see an important role for digital product passports in the CSRD and the implementation of the CSRD, which is the continuation of the non-financial reporting directive, places sustainability in a broader perspective, and mostly requires companies to prove what their actions are doing and what the effects are. And we believe that digital product passports can play an important role in that. Then onwards. Sustainable products are the new standards according to the ESPR, and we fully understand the need for that, and we think this is a very good development. And it means, like I already mentioned, that the DPP will be mandatory for the first product groups from 2027 onwards. All the categories you see in the picture here also are part of this ESPR regulation. So the DPP is only one aspect of that, but it brings together many of these aspects and makes sure that companies can follow up on them. What has to be recorded in DPPs? What kind of information do you connect to a physical product with a digital product passport? From a European Union perspective, for now, only a limited set of data points is decided upon, as you might well know. Stuff like use period, reusability, upgradability, repairability, but also, for instance, the refurbishment and recycling possibilities and environmental impact, CO2 emissions. The data points are going to be specified per product group in delegated acts, very bureaucratic procedures, and we do try to give input to these procedures as well, because we also have our own thoughts on what makes sense to include in a digital product passport. But from a European perspective, the eco-design requirements, which is Article 5, basically consists of performance requirements. So what is the minimum or maximum performance requirement of a product that is put on the European market? That can mean that a product has to be at least to some extent recyclable, or has to have an average use period of at least so many years. Additionally, in Article 7, there are information requirements attached to products that enter the European market, and that consists, among others, of circularity information, transparency, and information about sustainability along the entire value chain. And that is where the digital product passport comes into play. What makes sense to include in DPPs, in our view? Firstly, the general data points as already described in the ESPR. Secondly, what you know. Perfect information and data, unfortunately, are not always available. So we believe that because we are in a transition, that we should start with recording the information that we have, that we know, and then improve as we learn. Additionally, information that helps realize the potential of products. This is still a bit vague. We'll give some examples later on. Additionally, transparent impact data, which is a lot more complicated than quite some people think. Why that is incredibly complicated is also a topic that will be addressed later on. And lastly, dynamic data. We've seen quite a few examples of pilots with digital product passports, of which we think that they're not going to do the job that we want them to do because they're not dynamic. What do we mean by that? A product is put on the market, for instance, next month, and when it is put on the market, it is not recyclable. It has a certain material composition that doesn't change. But perhaps 2-3 years later, the company that put the product on the market has found some solutions for recycling, for refurbishment, and that changes the product. Basically, it changes the impact of the product. It changes the information need the information needs of the person that owns this product, because they want to be able to fulfill the potential of that product, which has changed. So we need to be able to adjust digital product passports as we go. In the end, they have to be able to substantiate, or we have to be able to substantiate sustainable choices. And it's a tool for that. What does it look like in practice? You might have already seen it on your phone, but this is an example of an e-bike. And to put it very simply, we need the material composition of products, and we need the end of use of products. So that's either incineration, refurbishment, recycling, or a combination of the three, to be able to calculate the impacts of products. And we can show that, we can visualize that in the digital product passport. Our system is connected to international databases that are also used by LCA consultancy firms. You might be well aware with them. EcoInvent, ANSYS Granta are the specific ones that we use. What we do is we use these the material information in these databases to translate the impact of products on as a range of scopes. I'll dive into that a little later. But in essence, we need a material composition and an end-of-use solution to calculate impacts. As I said, we're in a transition, so we need to generate insights and improve. If you know the material composition of your products, that's great. If you only know that your product consists of plastics, you can already record that, and we can calculate with averages. but you can make it as specific as you want. We can go all the way to cost number of specific materials and calculate the specific impacts. You can indicate whether it's recycled or virgin content, and like I said, you can indicate whether the material is recuperated either through refurbishment or recycling. We automatically calculate the impact of products, or the application does so, and we can apply a circular scope. What does that mean? We have a limited set of KPIs. You might be aware of life cycle analysis. They usually consist of 20, sometimes even more KPIs. We can't do all of that automated. That's way too complex, and especially if we want to do so for all of the sectors that we are active in. So we focus on CO2, energy, and H2O. Additionally, we have added materials saved compared to incineration, which means that you can compare a product that is, for instance, for 80% recycled end of use with a product that would be completely incinerated. And additionally, and connected to the earlier KPIs, we have the CO2 price, which is connected to the emission trading system in the European Union, and social return on investment. That's a bit of an odd one out, probably, but social return on investment, as you may know, sort of indicates what amount of time can be attributed to a product in terms of social return, and that can be reintegration projects, that can be giving people with a distance to the labor market a place in your production or assembly processes, and our customers communicate that through their digital product passports. On scopes, you can see the slider on the left. We can calculate cradle to cradle, cradle to grave, and LCA plus. Cradle to gate essentially means that you calculate the impact of a product up to the moment it leaves the factory. Cradle to grave means that you include the use and disposal, recycling, or refurbishment of the product in your calculation. And LCA plus goes even further. That's essentially calculating cradle to cradle. So what is necessary or what is needed to source materials up to and including the steps that are required to use that same amount of materials again. You can imagine that that is where a lot of the impact of products is. Our practices or the practical examples that we have basically indicate that if you want to compare two products and do so on a cradle to grave scope, it's not always obvious that the circular products comes out best. If you have a shoe that is made up of materials that can be reused through recycling or refurbishment, but have a little bit of a higher footprint in this first use cycle, and you only calculate cradle to grave, then they might not come out better than a product that is made of materials that require a little less CO2, energy, and H2O, or emit less CO2, obviously, in this first phase, but then are completely incinerated. If you then reason in terms of circularity, can we use these materials again? Then it becomes obvious that all the sourcing that needs to be done again for this product that is fully incinerated leaves a bigger mark. And our experiences show that usually then the products that are designed with circular principles in mind come out better. And that's eventually what we want to do. Information for the entire supply chain is the next thing that you'll find in our digital product passports and in most digital product passports that we've come across. Basically, what we want to do is let circular products come to fruition. We have some examples on the left. In our application, it is possible to add files, plain text, but also URL links. And like we said, we don't customize per user. But you can basically leave all the information in here that is necessary to realize the potential of products. An example of this, if I have worn a safety shoe for a year or so and it needs a touch-up to be reused, I want to be able to find out where I can leave my shoe. Does it go to a collection point? Can I fix it myself with some simple instructions? or do I have to send it somewhere to be fixed and to be returned? That is the kind of information that our customers leave in this extra information tab. And it includes end of use and simply use information. So how do I make sure that these safety shoes can be used for as long a use period as possible? It goes beyond a label, like I said. Basically, putting a label on a shoe that this is green is not enough, not if we want to realize the potential. That is why this is, in our eyes, digital transparency, using digital tools to provide the information that is needed to realize a green or as sustainable as possible product. You can also connect it with your own online channels. A QR code is one way to connect your physical product to a digital product passport. But we also have examples of companies that add it to their product page so you can access it through there. I have a couple use cases to show you how the DPP works or how the DPP in action works. Just have a quick sip. I will touch upon four, which are quite diverse, and I will focus on specific aspects of each use case to illustrate why we use these digital product passports. First, the circular supermarket. Some of you might know them. They're, I believe, the second biggest chain in the Netherlands, Jumbo. And basically what we help them do is create a new concept. I don't know if you're aware of the way retail handles furnishing of supermarkets or clothing stores, whatever you want to use as an example. But the general rule was that in 7 years' time, all of the furnishing elements are being written off and disposed of, and the supermarkets get a complete redo, and all of the material is lost. Usually only about 20% of materials are recuperated, and that's not even done by the supermarkets themselves. That's just done at the disposal sites where some materials are being saved. We thought that's completely unnecessary. We need to change this to a circular concept. So what we did is we recorded the entire furnishing of a supermarket in digital product passports, including the instructions that are needed to realize a better end of use. As a result, we managed to realize more than 80% circularity in this particular case. We secured the circularity, so they know in 7 or probably in 10 years' time, because we extended the use period for quite a bit. I see that someone wants to enter. Yes. There they go. We managed to record all of this information in digital product passports, calculate the impact, and therefore also extended the use period from 7 to at least 10 years. And for many products or furnishing elements way beyond. The example you see here is a wall. It's a wall that is refurbished end of use, that's easily detachable and reusable. And as a result of all these activities, we also managed to create a blueprint of what they can do for all of their stores. So we have insights on the effects of one store, but what if we translate that to 100 stores or even more? A couple key figures for this use case. We went from at least 80% waste to more than 80% circular, which essentially means that these materials are being recuperated at the end of a use period. We're saving 180 tons of CO2 per year by doing this. We didn't just look into the material side of things. We also looked at energy use within the supermarket. We took a bunch of measures to improve that. For instance, glass covered cooling, HR triple plus glass, the installation of heat pumps, stuff like that, which cost 53% less energy use. And all of these measures, not per se the energy use measures, but the material side of things, was recorded in 1,300 C passports, which is why we can track and follow the progress of doing so. Second example, Alfaios, a Dutch company as well, basically a wholesaler of cleaning products that do a little bit of private label production as well. They use the DPP in service of their sustainable transition. They want to do better, and they identified circularity as a business opportunity about 20 years ago already. They use it, among other things, to report and communicate about the impact of their products. They total the impacts of products recorded in digital product passports. They look into how much is sold, and the two of those combined create a pretty accurate picture that they can use, for instance, to substantiate their CSRD reporting. Like I said, they are one of the companies that are unfortunately not able to connect the digital product passports to the physical products because they do not have they cannot just order their suppliers to add QR codes to their products. So they chose to do so on their website. And they also use the digital product passport to prioritize and improve. So they sort of locate where the biggest impact is. They have a wide range of products, but where to begin, where to make the most impacts, and they can quickly identify where they can do so through the digital product passport. I've got one example of a project we did with them where we collected and tried to find new applications and recycling opportunities for discarded material. You probably recognize the cleaning equipment, and we basically pelletized this, and we are now in the process of looking into we're already connecting with their suppliers to be able to use the recuperated material in new products, and that way we can go full circle and close the loop within their system. So that's pretty incredible, and the beauty of it is that these new products are then recorded in digital product passports as well, and they can clearly identify the gains of doing so, the CO2 emission effect, the water effect, H2O effect, and energy effect of doing so. So that's a pretty good example as well. The circular safety shoe, already touched upon it with Elton earlier, but this is a different one. Emma Safety Footwear, a Dutch-based company that makes safety shoes. They use the digital product passport like some of the other companies for material choices. They can easily model whether it makes sense to use, for instance, a recycled PET or a different material, and what the effects of doing so would be, not only for one product, but also if they extend this to a whole range of product groups, or perhaps for all the products they put on the market. They provide information for customers, so they actually have a physical QR code in the shoe, and that way you can gain access to the digital product passport. And they also use it as input for reporting. And besides the digital product passport, we've helped them harvest materials from used safety shoes, and also to find ways to integrate recuperated materials in their safety shoes. I mentioned before that we also help companies bring across a message. So these are just some snapshots of things we did with them. We wrote a program for how they can move towards a positive footprint with their safety shoes, and also how to these boxes were distributed among their personnel to visualize what it means to be concerned with circularity and to try and harvest materials from products that have been used, and how you can use products that can be found on the market and recuperated in your own products. Lastly, I have a use case in electronics. I mentioned earlier that we participate in this research program of Shopping Tomorrow, and we have a use case group in which, among others, HP, GTDC, Bol.com, and FlexIT are participating. GTDC is an organization of distributors of technological products like laptops, mainly B2B. HP, you're all well aware of what they do. Bol.com is a Dutch web shop, also active in Belgium, and they sell everything from electronics to children's toys. And FlexIT is a refurbisher of laptops. As you probably also are aware, there are quite a few countries where governments, for instance, France, requires companies to, or not companies, their own organizations to use refurbished laptops. And that way we wanted to also connect the activities of refurbishers to the digital product passport and enable them to reflect what is the upside of using refurbished laptops. Obviously, there's a lot of technical requirements to doing so as well. But if we just look at the impact of doing so, we can easily calculate that with the digital product passport. And the beauty of this particular use case is that we connected all the supply chain partners with the source information coming from HP, moving all the way through the supply chain to where it ends up, which is back at the refurbisher. And we managed to sort of identify some findings on what might be challenges over the coming years. A positive, lots of data is readily available for specifically laptops. That is definitely the case. A problem or possible problem that we identified is that quite some assumptions differ across the supply chain. And then I'm speaking mostly about impact calculations. So there are different ways of approaching impact calculations. And we believe it's going to be very challenging to create sort of a common framework on how we do this. And lastly, transparency is sort of an issue, and that will not only hold true for electronics and laptops specifically, but this goes, for instance, this is for instance about refurbishing products. A refurbisher has or sort of makes a living from refurbishing laptops, and they will not be too eager to explain all of their activities in the extra information of a digital product passport. So it remains to be seen how transparent we can become in our supply chains. But that was quite interesting for us to identify as an issue. Quickly going to go past this one. We don't all start from scratch, probably aligns with what I've said before. Companies already do a lot, and we want to make that visible. I also sort of touched upon this one already. Our system is built up in such a way that you can fill in what you know, you can add and specify step by step. So if you only know that your bicycle is made out of a number of metals and a number of plastics, you can already record that. If you have a more detailed view, you can add all of those specific materials, and you can even dive into components. Another question that is quite relevant for the future of digital product passports is that, well, we already have hundreds, we already have thousands, but we don't have millions yet. And if projections are going to hold true, then that is what we're looking at. We're going to have to create digital product passports, at least for textiles, electronics, and batteries by 2027. That will already be represent millions of products. And even if we go for a item level or product level, so not even batch or specific item level, then we are already looking at millions of digital product passports. So we need to be able to scale up. We are already doing so in some ways. And there are certain systems that have to make this process easier. Using code standards, for instance, makes it easier to communicate between systems. We have to be able to sort of use information that is stored in different locations to create a vast number of passports. But unfortunately, even for code standards, it is the case that this is still very sector specific. We come across a wide range of codes like GTINs, but also the ETIM code standard. And we will have to find a way to sort of make sure that all of these can communicate with each other and make sure that we can scale up these passports. One of the important things to do is that we have to be able to follow master data management rules. A lot of our customers don't have a very organized information architecture. They store data in all sorts of systems. and this all has to come together to create digital product passports. But we see that basically as a second step. We would argue that it's important to first make sure that your information architecture and structure is organized, because that is a starting point from which we can start connecting systems and make sure we create larger numbers of digital product passports. We also see quite some challenges in the details in which companies want to go. Some are pretty happy with, well, my product is made of plastic, so that is what I'm going to communicate. Others want to know exactly where their products and materials come from. We believe that there is a transition that all these companies have to make, but they have to start with the must-haves, because it's challenging enough to create good bills of materials for the products that you produce, let alone go into extreme details and record all of this in digital product passports. Basically, keeping it simple, stupid. A helpful yet always hurtful comment, if I may say so. Lastly, interoperability is a common heard term, or a commonly used term, especially among code standards. The providers of codes always come up with interoperability, and we believe that is a no-brainer. So we believe that this system is only going to be fruitful if we can read other digital product passports, and if our digital product passport can be read by other systems. I see a comment also, the built environment is looking for material passports. Yes, Johannes, that's a good remark. There are initiatives all over the place. So what we actually want to prevent is that there are going to be 50 or 100 different types of digital product passports. There are definitely going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of providers of digital product passports. That should be fine. Competition is a good thing. You don't want to have companies facing a vendor lock-in. They should be able to leave us whenever they want. But the important thing is that the overall structure and language that we speak is somewhat the same, because otherwise we can never have these products move throughout supply chains or within companies or between companies, which is essential. And one of the things that we also would like to emphasize is that we have to build on existing data structures. And like I mentioned before, ideally these data structures are firstly organized in such a way that you have a single source of truth. So one place where all of your master data is stored, and that we can then use this data to create digital product passports. We don't want to be the single source of truth for companies. I've got a very brief explainer on how we use data, for instance, from PIM and ERP, so Product Information Management and Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, to fill digital product passports. We've just finalized connecting these systems with each other. So we are now able to use basically exports of the PIM systems to create digital product passports at scale. So that means not by hand, but importing data and creating them in large numbers without too much work to be done. I have, because we're running out of time pretty quickly, quite a few challenges that I would like to confront you with, and I'm very interested to hear about your thoughts. One of the challenges or next steps, whatever we want to call it, is what legislation is going to do. As it stands, delegated acts will determine the exact data points that are going to be required per product group. That is obviously something that we will have to conform with or comply with. So our system will probably change over the coming years to align with these data points. But there is still quite a lot of discussion also on the European level in terms of granularity. So how far do we go? Do we go on model level? So if we have a bicycle that we want to sell, then bicycle A is what we make a digital product passport of. Do we want to go batch? So even further. So bicycle A can consist of components that are exactly identical in terms of material composition, but they have some different sourcing, and that makes that they're different products and that they require different digital product passports? Or do we go even further and create unique digital product passports for every single bicycle that is put on the market, which will have lots of consequences, not only for the way we design our digital product passport systems, but also, for instance, for the amount of data that we're going to create and the strain that that will have. That will also have some effect in terms of emissions associated with data storage and stuff like that. Some elements that I'm possibly interested to touch upon, that there will be a division between public and restricted data, which will pose some challenges. How are we going to identify who gets to see what without making it very complicated to access the information? Additional product groups will follow over the coming years. So there's a list of prioritized product groups, but what makes sense to do first is still a question that we're pretty curious about what you guys think as well. Then additionally, one of the challenges that I'd be interested to know what your ideas are is that the EU is looking into setting up a central registry to look up DPPs. How are we going to organize this? The EU, as far as I know, has no idea at this point in time. We believe that if we have digital product passports at scale on market in 2027, and this registry is not there yet, things might get complicated. So that's a pretty interesting topic to dive into. And we also know the DPP requirements for batteries already, and they are extremely specified. So we see this as a pretty bad omen if they want to follow this example, because we foresee that a lot of companies do not have such specific data for different product groups. And that's why there's quite a bit of a question mark with that prospect. So there are a few questions to be answered. How strict will legislation be? How can we prevent greenwashing both from within and outside of the EU? I've heard some comments of companies that say, well, okay, if we have to create digital product passports to create a level playing field, then how can we make sure that there's no greenwashing from products, for instance, from outside of the European Union that might be a little bit less circular in terms of design and associated effects? How can we make sure that this system works and doesn't allow for greenwashing? That's not to say that there are probably a lot of terrible products on the European market as well, and that there are brilliant products from outside of the European market, and those have to come forward as better products as well. So how do we do that? Then how can we make the central registry work, as I already mentioned? And not unimportantly, what belongs within or to the DPP and what is already taken care of in other legislation? If you have any thoughts on these questions, please drop a comment. If there's none at this point, I'll continue. I have some practical challenges that we would like to discuss as well. We talked about standards in terms of codes, but there's more to standards, also regarding how we can share digital product passports, how they're built up, what building blocks are being used. And the harmonized standards are not even available at this point in time. They should be by the end of 2025. And we believe that that's a pretty short run up to 2027. If that leaves us just 1.5 years time or 2 years time to help companies completely set up digital product passports and all of the other data structures that are necessary to realize this. And even if we assume that harmonized standards will be created by then, to what degree will they actually succeed in interoperability and harmonization in practice? And that means for the way we use digital product passports. So how can we make sure that every product has a recognizable way of identifying the digital product passport, and that the information that is displayed on there is somewhat harmonized so that you can make sense of it as a consumer. A third one, which is probably a very general question, but very relevant. How will the DPP fit into the existing IT infrastructure? Like I said, it's pretty common for IT infrastructures to be very messy, even with corporates, and the DPP will require incredible amounts of, a lot of information that needs to be taken from several sources at this point in time. How can we make this scalable? I see another question. How can DPP enhance consumer awareness and influence purchasing decisions? Great. Is that a question you want me to answer? Because I can. Basically, what it has to do is that it allows consumers to see on product, scan on product, what the impacts are of their purchase. If I buy a product that has a green label or an orange label or a red label, I kind of question what it means for that product to have a green or an orange or a red label. I also know that there are a lot of people who believe it's quite a big ask of consumers to scan a product and to actually take this information into account. But what it will do, and that's sort of extended to influence purchase to the influencing purchasing decisions, is that if you have the information readily available to, for instance, hand in your product to be refurbished, it becomes much easier than if you, for instance, only have a wash label and have to look up the information online. So it's the connection of digital world to physical products that has to make this information more readily available. Another question is, how can we create standard solutions that align with the marketing ambitions of companies? We believe that the most important thing is that you create these insights so that you understand what the consequences of designs are of products, that you understand how you can make better products and how you can put those into practice. But we come across a lot of companies that have very specific marketing needs or wants, and our solution simply doesn't always fit those needs because we have a standardized solution. So how can we rhyme these two needs? That is a question that I would very much be interested in hearing your thoughts about. Our take on the practical side of things is that the technology to get going is available. If we start with the SKUs, so the stock keeping units, which basically represents the model of a product, so bike A instead of specific bicycle, that is already a pretty big achievement if we can manage that. And then we have to work towards more granularity. So then we can move to batches, to single items, and connect those to digital product passports. And the technological challenges are mostly about the practical connections between systems. And how can we make this happen without asking even more from companies that implement the DPP? Yet again, I'm putting up a picture of a bicycle. You might be sick of it by now, but still, it is relevant for the data question. I have two important questions to be answered, and we have ideas and solutions for these questions as well, but they can be much more more substantial. Question one is, how do passports of separately sold products end up in a total composition of an end product? You see a bicycle here, which consists of all sorts of products that are sold on the market separately. For instance, let's say the shifting system is sold by Shimano, but it's also used in the total composition of this bicycle. That means that we have to be able to integrate the passport of the Shimano shifting system into the passport of the bicycle without doing double work and having to create a completely new passport of the shifting system to use in that bicycle. At this point in time, we are only able to basically change the ownership of a digital product passport or copy a passport and then change the ownership of one of the two, in order to allow companies to share DPP data amongst each other and use that for end products or composed products. But that's a very interesting challenge to dive into. Sven Schummelfeder, are you able to merge data from different product passes, combine different immediate? Exactly. Dynamically and automatically at this point in time, no. And that is one thing that we probably will be researching ourselves as well, but we can definitely use help in that respect. We can only do it on the background, as I just mentioned, and that's a manual task. So at scale, definitely not at this point in time, but it will be necessary for the future of the bicycle in particular. Second, how do passports move between companies? And that's less of a technical question, and it's more of a practical and actually even a judicial question. Who is responsible for the DPP? So if I, for instance, produce this bicycle, but I don't put it on the market, according to legislation, the party that puts the product on the market is responsible for the DPP of the product. So how do we make sure that the producing party and the party who puts it on the market can exchange these digital product passports, and that they can transfer the data in a right way? And Anik, as you mentioned, also in terms of security and privacy, I can dive into that a little deeper. We have different measures, and it's a pretty big topic, security and privacy. So apart from safe data storage, which is one aspect, we also allow companies to shield certain types of information on the DPP. So we always have a internal version of the DPP. So for the bicycle, that would be the company that put this product on the market and that owns the DPP. And that contains all of the information that is generated and added to the passport. Then we also have a public version of the DPP, which is basically the one that you connect to the QR code or to a different identifier, and that you share with the whole supply chain or just with your end customer. And on that version, you can shield certain types of information, and that ranges from the specific materials. So you can, for instance, just show that it's made up of metals, plastics, and biogenics, and not that it's made specifically of recycled polyester. An important thing to keep in mind there is that some companies in some sectors also just are actually just restricted in what they can shield. So that's from our side, we provide the possibility to shield information, but the responsibility for being open and transparent and making sure that you provide all the information that you have to lies with our customers. I see another comment from Robert. Current project reports on DPP project often state that one of the major challenges is the development of business models. What are the points of reference for the development of business models by manufacturers or service providers? Okay. So your question is that sort of hinting on how can you illustrate that it makes sense to create circular propositions, or is it more specifically about the DPP? Maybe Robert can. We could also just open up the floor for him if you want.
If you want to transition swiftly to the Q&A, we can do it. And
yeah,
sure?
definitely,
okay,
because
perfect.
yeah,
Then, thank you very much for your presentation so far, and I open the floor to everyone who wants to. Let's say it that way.
I can already respond to because I see that Robert elaborated that it's about building business models around the DPP. Yeah, I can give an example. I already mentioned Alfios. So that's a company, a wholesaler in cleaning products. One of the ways in which they monetize the DPP, if to put it very bluntly, is that by applying digital product passports, they've managed to save a lot of money on impact calculations, costs that they don't have to make because they use the DPP. Secondly, and possibly even more importantly, they have landed a couple of very big government projects. So they are now supplying, for instance, the Dutch defense organization with cleaning products, and a lot of points that were awarded for their proposal were based on sustainability and making that practical. So all of their products are connected to digital product passports, and they landed a sort of a 50 million plus assignment from the Dutch government. And that is something that we see more commonly. So governments giving points for proposals that contain sustainability data and detailed sustainability data. So that's a couple of ways to create a business model around a DPP. But another one would be, for instance, to make sure that you retrieve materials. We see quite a lot of sectors in which materials are scarce, which means they get more expensive. And if you manage to retrieve materials, you can use them again, and you have less investments in terms of sourcing. I can keep talking. I've got so many examples in mind. Maybe it's best to go for another question.
Sure. We have some questions from earlier.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Johannes was also asking, from literature of current material passports and digital product passports require significant manual input to the creation of passports. How would you address that?
Yeah, so I think I already spoke about it a little bit in connecting systems. We sort of have a hybrid situation at this point. So quite a lot of companies create them by hand. To give you an idea, that takes about 2 to 3 minutes if you're a bit handy with the system. So it's not even that big of a time investment for companies to create them. But we have are now transitioning to automatically taking source data from BIM or ERP systems. And the next step is that we're going to connect them through APIs, so that we'll be able to automatically create DPPs once a new product is being entered into a BIM system. So that takes away even more of this manual work. But our experience learns that even if you're working with up to, let's say, 500-600 DPPs, it's quite doable, quite manageable to create them and to maintain them. It obviously becomes a lot more complex if you put, let's say, 50 new products on the market each month. But our current customer base is not like that. So for them, it's still quite manageable. But it's definitely a relevant question. Yeah.
Then we also have a question from. I hope it's answered, Johannes. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself. Feel free to discuss.
Yeah. Feel free to do so.
Otherwise, we also have a question from. So now I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, sir. From Prachi or Prachi. How do the companies compare the prices of the materials? Would you like to unmute yourself and discuss?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Prachi. When you told about the dashboard that you can compare the materials, different materials, and you can opt to a better one or see which one is better. So how is that information being uploaded? Is it in the DPP or is it on the dashboard uploaded by the company itself?
Okay, so what you can do with our system is that basically the DPP is your source of information. So that is where a product is basically recorded in a passport with a certain material composition and a certain end of use, and that leads to impact. So that translates to the impact KPIs. What you can then do is basically a couple of things. You can create a dashboard in which you compare two products. So you create a DPP for one product, and then you can create a second one. You can very easily copy, and then sort of change the composition. So you can say, okay, well, for this one, I'm going to use recycled polyester instead of regular virgin polyester. And then you can see what the impact of that is. So it automatically calculates the effect and the difference between those two products. You can also total up. So you can say, okay, what is the total impact of all of these products? And what we've recently added is that you can also simulate with a different end of use. So you can imagine that a company that puts hundreds of safety shoes on the market, thousands, millions, let's assume millions, because that's the case for some of our customers, they can see the impact of all the products they put on the market with a certain end of use. For instance, these are unfortunately incinerated. And then they want to make a substantiated decision, an informed decision on whether it makes sense and what the progress would be if they would take back all of these shoes and recycle them. They can simulate what a different end of use would do. So they could see, okay, if we have incineration as end of use, we have 200 tons of CO2 emissions. But if we recycle them end of use, we have, for instance, 60 or 80 tons of CO2 emissions. And they can quickly gain insights into what it would benefit, what benefits would result from doing so. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, then we have also another question, and I hope it's clear. Otherwise, you can ask another question, Ida. What is the product passport and who are the users? I hope it should be clear by now.
I can elaborate a little bit on the users. So what we see is that it's used by a couple of groups. I started out with it's used for consumers, for companies, and legislators. And those three all have clearly different motives to use the digital product passport. So for consumers and companies, it's basically making better sustainable choices. That's the driving force. And for legislators, it's for instance checking whether companies are actually doing what they're claiming, and making sure they comply with all sorts of legislation. So that's basically the users. Okay.
Can I have a follow-up question on that?
Of course, please shoot.
Yeah.
Sure.
When you said that they are pay per use of the passport, what does it mean?
It means that you pay for the or our customers pay for the amount of digital product passports that they deploy, basically. So and we apply a pretty big sort of I actually forgot the English word, but you pay less when you create more gradually. So I think I put it on one of the slides, so you can always check later on when we share the slides. But the first 3 passports cost a total of 60 euros per month. So that means you're paying 20 euros per month per passport. But if a company is using, for instance, 1,000 passports, they only cost about €1 a piece to use. So that's how we try to sort of stimulate the use of a larger number of passports and to allow them to go into detail without paying much more to do so.
Okay, so does it mean, like, if you say 1 passport, is it like for one product, all the different information for that product, or all the each information about a product? For instance, maybe you write about the saddle, what it's made for, and then that is one passport, or all the parts of that product?
You're correct. So what you can do is you can create a product passport that is just at the level of the bicycle. So that contains all of the materials and doesn't specify what the individual material composition is of a saddle and of a shifting system. But you can also layer the passport. So you have the top layer, which is the bicycle, and that consists of underlying products. That is all the things, all the elements within the bicycle that are sold separately, basically. So a saddle, maybe a battery for the e-bike, tires, rims, stuff like that. And then you can go even deeper and you can specify the components that make up a saddle, because a saddle is made up of possibly some leather, maybe some strings, a metal structure. So you can go into that level of specificity, but that doesn't result in a much higher pricing. So that's why we structured the pricing in that way, because we want to allow companies to keep it simple, but also to go a bit deeper to gain more insights from those layers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you for
Okay,
the question.
great. So we run out of questions. If you want to raise one, please unmute yourself. Otherwise, I have a question. Because circularity, we know, depends on product level very much on the design of the product, right? So how do you include, as you said, it's for remanufacture, it's for refurbishing as well, your passport. How do you include the product design in the passport itself?
Yeah, so what you can do, and that basically builds on what we've just spoken about, that you can go from a product level a bit deeper into the design of the product. And you can even specify whether individual components can be recycled or whether they can be refurbished. We have some examples, and this actually applies to the e-bike as well, if you still have it on your phone. If not, I'll quickly move back to the slide where you can find it. Yes, let me find it. Here it is. So you can see a total end of use of that bicycle, and that is nuanced based on the underlying layers of the product. So this e-bike is built up of all sorts of components and products towards that end product. And per component, we have registered and recorded whether it can be recycled, and it automatically also calculates the impact of the fact that it can be recycled and or refurbished. And that is how, for instance, Emma Safety Footwear, one of the other examples that we spoke about, looked into compositions of shoes and what it means for a shoe to be composed of materials that are reusable, that are that they can disassemble, and what it would mean if they couldn't disassemble these materials, and that also allowed them to simulate with different scenarios. I hope that answers at least part of your question.
Definitely. Okay, we have one more question from Johannes. I think it's the last one, as we're running out of time in the meeting. I would like to know what the modules of LCA is included in your framework.
Okay, so strictly speaking, we have to make a division between the two. So it's not an LCA. We build on the basic principles of LCA, and we're well aware of the modules that make up LCAs. But strictly speaking, it is included in our calculation what the sourcing effects are. We work with averages of transportation because we simply can't calculate for every single product, because we don't go into the details of the operations, what the exact kilometers are, for instance, that are driven to transport materials. So we work with averages there, and practice learns us that usually only differs about 1 or 2% if we make sort of a comparison with an actual complete LCA. We also include, depending on what scope you select, the manufacturing of products, the disposal of products, refurbishment or recycling. And then with LCA Plus, we also include the sourcing of all the material that was lost in the first use cycle, with which we try to express the circularity of a product.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to go over time, except you have some time, Jasper. It highly depends on you. If you have another 5 minutes, we have 2 more questions.
I can see it.
Either is the QR code generated automatically and attached to the product?
Yeah, so if you create a digital product passport within Cirmar, it automatically generates a QR code. But it's good to understand that there are many different ways to connect a QR code to your product. For instance, if you look at the GTIN code standard, you're probably well aware of barcodes that are on products. The company that provides these is called GS1, and they are going to change the barcode, the simple barcode, to a QR code that has some extra functionalities to it. So the barcode that they will provide in the future, and it's being used in all sorts of sectors, is going to be able to link to different sources of information. So for instance, if you scan it with your phone, you would end up on the digital product passport. But if you scan it with, for instance, an industrial scanner or a specific application on your phone, you could end up seeing the, for instance, stock keeping information or cash registry information. So it can be used on different places, on different actors, and retrieve different information from the same QR. So that's a different route to take. But know that it's automatically generated within our system, where you can always use the URL, so the link that it links to, in different identifiers.
Okay, great. Then we have a question from Yi here. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Please.
Oh, yeah, hello. Yeah, thank you for your great presentation. For DPP, data scope, collection, validation, and labeling are all important. Can I get information on third-party verification institute who will certify the reliability of this data? Thank you.
It's a good question. As far as I know, there are currently no third-party verification parties of DPPs. I do know that it's on the agenda for the European Union to specify in the ESPR. But at this point, there is no third-party verification. And I myself personally wonder why it is necessary, because what we try to do and what we hope others will do as well is that we try to be as transparent as we can, and that we prevent a situation where we generate data that has to pass 20 checks before we can do something with it. So we are not aware of parties that currently verify as a third party what is being published in digital product passports. But if you're looking for information, I look on the European Commission website and try to find more information there. But I'm guessing that it's still pretty vague and not specified to an extent that you can actually use it at this point in time.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. Then I would say we're at the end of our scheduled meeting time. Jasper, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights. It's great to see the hands-on insights to digitalize the circular economy. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this time with us here in this webinar. Would you like to add something, Jotte?
No, I don't think so. I would like to sincerely, provide our gratitude for this kind of insightful presentation, Jesper. You have not only demonstrated, how digital technologies can be an enabler for circular economy, but for researchers, you have given some food for thought as well, some ideas about, these are some of the areas that we haven't focused into. So that was also very fabulous. So yeah, I think, just a round of applause from everyone here for your time to do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Yeah. I'm very happy to be addressing academia like this, and please feel free to get in touch if you have any thoughts or are in need of some more background information. Always happy to provide that, and looking forward to all of your activities in the circular economy. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. See you at the next time, the next event. See you. Bye.
Yeah. Watch the
Bye-bye.
space. Yeah. Take care then. Bye.